Hey everyone, Papercut here with another theory breakdown video, or I guess this is like data and theory because I do crunch a fair amount of numbers to do this video. My question was, who was the best farming eco by age? As always, please like and subscribe to help support my content. It really matters for a channel my size, as well as check out me on Twitch, check out my coaching Discord. It's all in the links below the video. Let's start first with farming theory. The purpose of farms is to provide you an endless supply of food. It is the only resource in the game that is infinite. Now, technically, you can get infinite food from infinite gold from trading, and for some civs you can get multiple resources, but some maps don't have trade, and trade is inherently a lot more difficult to set up than farming. But it gives you an endless supply of food. Now, why are farming ecos different per civ? It's really obvious that the devs have created civs each with different strengths and weaknesses. So generally with civs that have really strong farming or really strong ecos, they're weak in other ways. Maybe weaker units, maybe unique unit comps, maybe those techs hit after a lot of investment. So there's a risk behind investing into your farm eco as opposed to trying to get food on the map. And that's kind of the issue with farms in general. Unlike with deer, with sheep, with boar, with fishing, which does have an initial investment, farms are actually very expensive. For the average civ, it costs 75 wood to set down a farm, and farming is not that good. Since it's endless, it was really smart for the devs to make farming not that great. If you look at the tier of food gathering rates, farming is right below sheep for the average civ, and around berries, honestly, as I understand it. And so trying to go mass farms early in a game will often kill you. You have to invest a lot into those, and then you're not even getting that much food. And so under that idea, a civ that is getting deer, that is getting boar, that is getting sheep will be able to outproduce you and kill you. So that's kind of the balance. The balance is those who are more aggressive being on the map, who get better resources, can make more units. Those who go for safer farms are going to be behind because of the investment. But if the game goes long, at some point you're going to have to add farms. At some point the food on the map's going to run out and you're going to have to add farms. And for some civs, it's actually very beneficial to add farms earlier than others. And so I wanted to do this breakdown. The purpose of this breakdown is to show you which civs tend to like farming, which ones are good at farming. And so if you play that civ, you know, if you can maximize those specialties, you're gonna get the most out of it. And also I just think it's an interesting exercise to see which civs are the best farming civs by age. The one thing I wanted added, context from old seasons. Before this season, before this DLC, before the Pro Scout meta, a big thing was the civs that could farm well were winning, because farming used to be way better. You used to get more resources out of it. And so ever since they nerfed that, farming has, I think, reached a much better niche where there is risk reward behind going farming as opposed to going out for resources in the map. So let's get into it. So first, the setup. I try to be realistic with the farm setup. There's a lot of ways you can min-max farming, and I tried to be realistic for in a game, what can a civ do? So to do that, I did just a normal 8 farms around a mill. I'm not doing some crazy large farm structure. I'm doing the average person can pretty easily set up 8 farms around the mill. Now, for some civs, I know there are unique circumstances that are realistic in game. So for example, Japan, you're going to upgrade your TC with the Daimo Manor upgrade, which will give you better farming. So I did set up the Japanese farms around the TC, which is very realistic. HRE and OTD, they have the Aachen as an option. And so for HRE, I did all of them under Aachen because it's very, very common for HRE to go Aachen. And if you don't go Aachen, you can at least get prelates who can buff Vils at a mill. So no matter what, you're probably getting that buff. OTD, I did villagers on and off because it's actually pretty realistic for OTD to not do the Aachen. The thing I want to add, it's actually not that big of a difference. So if you're an OTD player who spares by the mine work, honestly, you're not losing a crazy amount of food. It is better, but it's not at a level that I think it's like you have to go Aachen or else you're hurting yourself economically. It actually makes me reassured as someone who plays OTD a lot. And lastly, for China and Zushi, it is common for them to set up around granaries. And so I'm not going to have them do normal mills. Almost always a good China or Zushi player will get granary set up. So I did them around granary. So there is some little nuance to that as well. Lastly, for every age, I did all the upgrades possible. Now, this did make it weird for some civs that have scaling bonuses. So for example, Roost with the bounty system, I did bounty level 1 for Feudal, bounty level 2 for Castle, bounty level 3 for Imperial. For Byzantine with the cisterns, I did 5 cisterns because it's a very common strategy right now for Byzantine to rush 5 cisterns. So I think it's even realistic in Feudal for Byzantine to have 5 cisterns. So I did 5 cisterns for their farming eco. And then for everyone else, as long as the upgrade was available in Feudal, I did it. With the idea being is like, if you're playing a long Feudal, if you could get every single farming upgrade, how good's your farming eco? All right, let's jump into it. So first, civs of no farming bonus. A significant amount actually, once I actually broke it down. So these are all our civs with no farming bonus at all, which also includes no bonus to like gathering rates or no bonus to hold rates. What I mean by that is these civs, if any civ had a way that made their villagers faster, carry more, or gather faster, that to me is a farming bonus. These civs have none of those. So French, JD, Knights Templar, House of Lancaster, Malians, Mongol, Ottomans, they all have the base upgrades. Mongol doesn't even have farming, but the point being is, for all these civs, it's pretty obvious that the eco focus on other things. French gets better trade. JD can actually reduce the cost of their units, and I think they're more leaned into being a military-only option. Knights Templar, they get food from wood. House of Lancaster has the manors. Malians have the pit mines and the cows. Mongols trade is really their biggest economic lever, and then Ottomans, they get the free military units. So it's obvious that with other bonuses, other eco or military bonuses, they're not going to give them better farming. On top of that, some civs that have very few upgrades, Ayubid and Delhi, I honestly could have put on here. They have very few upgrades that help them, and honestly, their farming ecos aren't that great. So you could throw Ayubid and Delhi on here as civs that also aren't amazing at farming. That's not really the thing that's turning the lever for them. That was the wrong way to say that phrase. Oh well, let's move on. So base farm stats. So these are 8 villas around a farm, no special civ upgrades, none at all. So I took French and I just did 8 farms around their mill, and there's no other special upgrades. So, and that means there's no special passive I didn't consider. This is straight up 8 villas on farms. So for no upgrades at all, 275 food per minute. If you add wheelbarrow, that's 295. If you add just horticulture, that's 305. If you do both wheelbarrow and horticulture at the same time, that's 350. Horticulture being the farming upgrade, wheelbarrow being the general move speed and amount that a villager can hold upgrade. Excuse me. Castle, that's all the upgrades you can possibly get that are common upgrades shared between all civs, 345. And then Imp, 360 food per minute. Honestly, not that great. And it's going to be really interesting to compare civs that have unique upgrades that change that. So for our civs like JD, French, that's their farming upgrade in Imp. Same for Knights Templar, like there's nothing else buffing them, so it's pretty low. If they're sitting on farms, it's really not ideal for them. That leads us to Feudal. So the best farming in Feudal, technically it's Order of the Dragon, and that's farms around the Aachen at 441 food per minute. Now the potential issues around including OTD is that technically their vills are better on a 1-to-1 basis. They can hold more, they can gather more. But that's the interesting part. At 8 vills around the Aachen, Order of the Dragon barely beat China, we're going to get to in a second. So that means their vills are actually gathering at a much worse rate. So really, if we did the amount of vills per that like fit. So for example, I think really it should be about technically 5 to 6 OTT vills equal 8 normal vills. It would be even worse. So technically, if you do the same amount of vills, you're going to do better. But for most of the game until very late, it's hard for OTD to have the same amount of vills. So it's just not a realistic number. So I wanted to include them because technically they're the highest in Feudal, and they're very high throughout Castle and Imp, but that's misleading because having the same amount of vills is kind of rare. So it really goes to China at 432 farms per minute. Now this is also an interesting technicality. So at first I did the bottom image down here where I went, okay, it's pretty common that when Chinese players set up granaries, they put all 3 granaries and then they put farms around them. It's a very common style. And so I went, generally it's suggested not to put an IO or Imperial official watching the granary. Instead, your Imperial officials are like on a mill that's on berries, or they're on wood or gold, or they're pumping a building or research or something. But I wanted to test it. So what I did was I did 8 farms with 3 granaries like this, and then I did farms set up like this, which is pretty optimal. Corners are slower, so that's 8 and then 1 IO on it. And the interesting thing is it's faster to do 1 granary, 8 farms, and an Imperial official observing than the 3 stacking granary bonus. For those who don't know China Zushi, granaries provide 10% gather speed stacking. So if you have 3 together, the farms being touched by all 3 get 30% gather speed. The Imperial official makes it so they drop 20% extra resources. So if they drop 10 food, they actually drop 12 with Imperial official watching. So that leads me to say, you're a China or Zushi player and you're strapped for food and you're desperate, it's actually smarter to just drop 1 granary, put farms around it, and put an IO on it instead of trying to invest extra wood into the extra granaries. So just an interesting thought. I'm not going to do that for Castle Imperial, because Castle and Imperial, it's much more common to do a much larger farm transition, at which point having the Imperial official on one of the granaries is inefficient compared to them being on something else, which is singular resource. So that's just for Feudal. After Feudal, for Castle Imperial, I'm doing the 3 granaries with 8 farms around it. Sweet. So that's 432 food a minute. Pretty crazy. 432 minus 315, which is the base. That means China, over the average no special farming civ, is getting 107 food per minute difference out of 8 vills, which is honestly pretty crazy. You extrapolate that over more and more and more vills, that's a huge farm food lead compared to civs who don't have any farming bonuses. So that's why you often see Chinese players okay with doing a pretty early farm transition, because it really pays off for them. At the end of this presentation, I will have a nice little list of all the good farming civs so you can kind of compare numbers. Castle. It is a tie between Japan and HRE. Wow, Japan! At 450 food per minute. HRE, they have some special stuff going on. The Aachen gives a 40% gather speed, and then I also added Devoutness on there, which gives another 5% gather speed, and then of course you have the normal upgrades. Japan, they have the unique wheelbarrow. So their unique wheelbarrow is a combination of wheelbarrow and horticulture. Now what's interesting is, at the level 3 upgrade, which you can get in Castle, it is better than wheelbarrow, and it's better than the double horticulture you get at the time around Daimo. We'll get to that in a second. So if Japan had 8 farms around a house with no TC bonus, they're a lot worse, but the Daimo is critical. I did do a level 3 Daimo. That's somewhat not realistic. So this is like best case scenario for Japan is investing, which is a lot of resources. It's a lot of stone to get the level 3 Daimo, but if you get it, it's 60% gather bonus with the full unique wheelbarrow upgrade, all the way up to, I forget the name of the top of my head, I'm sorry. It's 450 food a minute. That's pretty good. The issue with Japan is that there's no scaling. There's no imp upgrade for their unique wheelbarrow, and they don't get the imp farming upgrade, so that it's stuck at that. There's no way to make it better at that point, so they can maximize it in Castle, and then the way they maximize it after that is just always having farmers around TCs that are fully upgraded. So for other civs, it's a little bit more flexible. Like HRE can have their gather bonus anywhere for prelate or with upgraded monasteries. Japan's just around TCs. So it's easier. Also, it's a lot less investment. HRE can do that with way less investment than Japan. That's another issue. So for some of these civs, you have to invest a lot for their farming eco to be good. Byzantines is one with all the cisterns. Abbasid, there's a lot of upgrades they need to maximize it. Others, it's not that much. China and Zushi, it's just getting Song for granaries and then building them. Gets you most of it. So Japan has to invest a lot, but it is worth it if you can get it up. But as I said, after this, Japan has no special scaling, so they get kind of stuck at that point. So at 450 minus 350, which is the base, that means farming, that means Japan and Atria are getting 115 food per minute more than the average no special farming civ, which is, once again, that's a lot of food, and that's just 8 vills. So you scale that up even more, and you start to see some huge jumps, which is why I think you're seeing Japan lean more and more into just, I get some food on the map, and then I'm trying to add farms, because it really does pay off. You can get the Daimo upgraded. And then lastly, Imperial, who's surprised? It's China. China barely beat out Zushi because Zushi, Zushi has very similar rates to China, but China gets a few more eco techs. I think the biggest difference you see between China and Zushi is at the Imperial, like Castle Imperial level. China gets more eco bonuses. Zushi gets more military bonuses. So that's not to say that Zushi gets no eco bonuses, but a lot of China gets even eco military bonuses, while Zushi gets a lot more just pure military bonuses. Now keep in mind, it's a lot of upgrades. You have to get all the imp upgrades. On top of that, there's ancient techniques, which what that does is it gives you gather boost based on how many dynasties you've been to. So this is all 4 dynasties boosted, plus all the upgrades and the 3 granaries set up in an efficient fashion. That's still 8 villagers with 3 granaries, all those bonuses, is 500 food a minute. And that's just 8 vills. That's impressive. That's a lot of food from just 8 villagers. You set them up perfectly on the granaries, it is a lot of food. It is a lot of food. Which is why letting China or Zushi get the granary set up means it's really hard to beat them, because they just have so much freaking food, and these farms are producing gold through taxes. So good luck on that. So with that, let's check the overall numbers for comparison. So some other good farming civs. Once again, you can have OTD on there somewhat. Ayubit and Delhi are just not great farming civs. I didn't add them on here. The ones that contended, though, for some good farming. You have Byzantine, And how it works is it's the Civ, then the Feudal, Castle, and Imp food per minute. And this is under all their upgrades they can possibly get. For Abbasid, it also means the same thing. I did a very similar thing for Abbasid I did for Rus, where for Abbasid, they have a gather bonus at 10 buildings and 60 buildings. Not really realistic for them to get that and they can get the 10 in Feudal, of course, but it's hard to get the 60 through Castle, maybe late Castle. So I did 10 building upgrade for Feudal and Castle, and then I did at Imp, I did the 60. So Byzantine 390, 405, 426. Abbasid 345, 402.5, 461.5. Atri 465. English 435. And Rus, English 375, 405, 435. And then Rus 330, 365, 405. So overall, that's some pretty big numbers. And these, once again, are just 8 bills. So if you scale that out, it does really affect how these civs do in Imperial. And generally see the civs that are best in Imperial have the best farming economies. I mean, either they have really good trade, unlike French, they can get 2 resources. Technically, Abba can too. That's why Abba is a late Imperial nightmare, because they get so many free resources from trade, and they have a great farming eco. So civs that have great farming ecos are usually great in Imperial. And that's why China and Zushi are not to be messed with in Imperial. And that's why you see these civs, I think, are generally considered all really good Imperial civs. So hope you find that interesting. Hope you learned something. Let me know if there's anything you're surprised about in the comments below. Check out I'm starting to do a beginners of AOE 4 series. So if you're new to AOE 4, check that out. I posted the first one yesterday. If you're watching this way later, then just check my video logs. I'm going to be adding more of those soon. Check me out, as I said, check me out on Twitch. Check out my coaching Discord. Thank you so much, and good luck on your games.